Okay, how's this running? Hello there. Um, okay, good show tonight. Getting started a bit later than usual, but that's might be happening, like I said, in the relatively, you know, foreseeable future as a lot of changes happen around here. But we are not stopping. That is a guarantee. And you can count on that at least. But I do apologize for the inconsistent times. I will reveal what is going on soon. Good things, I would imagine, at least. We're waiting to see how some things turn out. But I think that lots of good things are in store for the future of this project. So, first of all, please hit the like button. Please comment down below any questions that you have, or tips that you have, or thoughts that you have, criticisms, whatever, into the comments. It helps fuel the algorithm. We're going to talk about some things today that I've focused on quite a bit on this channel over time from the very start. One of them is academia, and the culture within science is the main focus of tonight. And if you look at the very beginning of my channel, you will see that the first video I ever posted was called, I believe, Escaping Our Academic Institutions. And that is still, I think, what needs to happen. But we're going to talk about why a lot tonight. We're going to talk about a discussion that was had on Brian Keating's podcast, who is a professor of physics at the University of Southern California. Or no, UC San Diego. It is Southern California, but it's not Southern California. There's so many UC something, 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 so I'm just trying to keep it straight in my head, and my dyslexia, or whatever you want to call it, is acting up. But it's University of San Diego, and Brian is very brave when it comes to tackling topics that a lot of the scientific community has shied away from, and that's part of what we're going to discuss tonight. So is Eric Weinstein, another participant in this discussion on Brian's podcast, Into the Impossible. The link to the full discussion is below. I highly suggest subscribing to Brian's channel. Also included in this discussion is Avi Loeb. Avi Loeb is I believe he is the head of astronomy. We're going to go through everybody's bio in a minute, but at Harvard. And he started the Galileo Project in response to the recent announcements over the past couple of years by the United States government pertaining to UFOs, UAPs, whatever you want to call them. And I really will say I had my doubts about that project because of even the name of it, and because Galileo's telescopes were focused on things far away, and it just has an association with looking at the stars to me, and that might not be right. That might be my own bias kicking in, but he did discuss it in this, how they have to build all new sensors because they're not focused on the stars. The focus of the project is on detecting aerial anomalies that are moving, within the atmosphere, essentially, and not outside it, beyond it. I think that is a good idea, and it give me quite a bit more faith in this project. Not faith, but I don't like to use that word faith in this instance. It's but or in really any instance of beyond God, but just more confidence that he has been paying close attention, and he's not letting preconceived narratives guide the project, which is good. There was a lot of narratives, and we're going to talk about them that are seriously hindering the scientific community. And he talked about it quite a bit, and I think that they did a great job. So we're going to talk about it. Just testing the volume here, but here we go. So we're going to go through some clips, and I will say also that the new and latest podcast that I did last week is now up, and it is on Kourosh's channel, which I will link to below, actually, at the end of this. But it was a great time. Like I said last stream 2 weeks ago, we did not have a stream last week because I was traveling, and we might be moving. That's basically like what I will say is I don't know exactly where yet. It depends on some things and how things play out here. But we're looking at moving from where we are to a different part of the country, or just I don't know, definitely a different part of the country. Maybe a different part of the state, but probably not. Probably different part of the country. We're hoping to get out of the state and move to somewhere else. But that might change the time of the show. I mean, it would, but it's not going to change the consistency, and it's not going to change the content. And we're going to keep chugging along. With that, let's get into some clips. So, this first clip really highlights the exact problem of what I mean by preconceived narratives guiding this entire discussion away from where it should go. And we're going to talk about probably some theories that I have as to why it should go in a certain direction, and then also some statements. And also resisted. My computer is a bit slow, but it is probably going to be upgraded soon. The content quality is going to take another boost if we move, especially, I would imagine. So be on the lookout for that. But this next clip is about how SETI supposedly banned the discussion of UAPs at any forums and meetings that they had. And it's stated by Avi Loeb. And we'll talk more about it in a minute after I show this. But here you go.
Allowing in conferences, lectures on this subject. It was banned. And now I say, okay, the government
UFOs to astrobiology or any other thing other than a sort of aliens of the gaps argument where people assume that if they don't have an explanation, it might be aliens. How do you react to such a statement?
Well, I should say I'm most surprised by people that work on SETI, because many of them objected to any scientific study of this and also resisted allowing in conferences, lectures on this subject. It was banned. And now I say, okay, the government really wants to know the answer. How can the scientific community shy away from it? It's very often said that we shouldn't waste taxpayers' money. Well, guess what? The government and the public that pays the taxes are very curious about this. So how can scientists say, no, this is too speculative, we don't want to deal with it? Obviously, this should be in the mainstream of science.
Agreed. So, why? Why is this banned from SETI, of all places? And the thing is that Avi might be surprised by this, but I'm not at all surprised by this. I am extremely unsurprised by this. This makes perfect sense to me, and I actually kind of anticipated it. And that is because I've seen this happen in physics, where I brought a lot of my ideas and work on sentient singularity theory to people in the physics and mathematics communities, and I've just seen the absolute rejection of anything new that is different from the direction that things have been going, in specifically what has been taught. Okay, it's not, there's people like Nima, who are talking about how space-time is dead and we need, a new, more fundamental structure of the universe to look at and things like that. And that's correct. But what is being taught in the mainstream of physics to undergrads is anything that flies in the face of that is flat out rejected and banned. Not just rejected and mocked or anything like that. That, I can deal with that. Everybody can deal with that who is truly invested in this. And we're going to talk about that as well. In any kind of scientific pursuits, it is a calling. Eric Weinstein says this in this video. And we're going to look at that clip in a few minutes. But he said science is a calling, and it's not, we painted it as science is fun, and the reality is science is dangerous, and it is a calling, and you do it because kind of you feel obligated. And I absolutely agree with that. There's no way I'd be where I am with this, even with this. And I'm not saying that, oh, look at how far this has come, which it has come very far, but that's not saying that it's anywhere close to being accepted either. But the amount of persistence that you need to go up against academia and the narratives of academia, the most fundamental narratives of academia, it has to be a calling. It cannot be based on whether or not it's fun or whether or not you're getting followers or anything like that, because that's not how you're rewarded with good times and likes. You're rewarded because you feel an obligation to do it, and then you see it, kind of make creeping progress, and that is rewarding. But Avi talking about SETI rejecting any talk of UFOs or UAPs and flat out banning it. Okay, just for context, SETI we'll go over right now, because SETI should be the most interested in any kind of signs of extraterrestrial life. And I don't think that these things are extraterrestrial anyways, but we'll get to that later again, as I've stated. But here you go. SETI's website. Where will you be when we find life beyond Earth? I don't know. Where were you in 1947? But nonprofit organization. From microbes to alien intelligence, the SETI Institute is America's only organization. Okay. Wholly dedicated to searching for life in the universe. We're getting closer to discovering life on other worlds. How do they know that? First of all, how would they know? If you make zero progress, then you don't know. Like, they've made zero progress, guys. Just so you know. That's public, at least. But the reason why they want this banned, and there's two possibilities. One is that, and this is what I've experienced, is when I brought my ideas forward, they weren't just mocked. They were flat out banned from every physics group that I joined. I was banned when I was very polite, always. I've always been very polite when it comes to presenting my work. I try and be as impeccable with my word as possible. And because I know I can't afford not to be, that is why. And still banned. But people who are totally, like, incoherent are not banned because they're not a threat. I was a threat. And now that the UAP topic is being taken more seriously, it's banned when it's actually, like, focused on what they have found. And the reason why is because all of SETI has been focused on, publicly that we know of at least, looking out to the other planets and other solar systems for life, and they've made no progress. They've had, instances of, anomalies, sure. But as far as we know, they've never detected anything that was confirmed. And the government is now saying, well, we have confirmation of technologies that are well beyond our capabilities operating in our airspace. And while SETI is still pointed out into the stars, this would be banned from SETI. Even if SETI has found other things that, and is well aware at the, upper echelons of its management of this phenomenon, and if they're working for this, I don't know, intelligence agencies, and they're banning it because they're trying to throw people off from, the phenomenon that they've viewed for whatever reason, technological back engineering or whatever, it doesn't matter. If they could be an intelligence asset to some degree, and probably are, and have been compromised in some way, to be honest. Why would you not? If you were an intelligence agency trying to cover up the presence of what you thought even was an extraterrestrial intelligence, even if it's not, you would be utilizing SETI to do it. But even if it's not, the point is that if this turns out to be true, and there's actually craft from another civilization, doesn't matter where it's from. It could be from the center of the Earth, and I think that's probably closer to reality than it being from another planet. As crazy as that sounds, I don't think they're from the center of the Earth originally, but I do think that they're underground. Then what this means is that your organization is absolutely useless. Gone. Not really, because it's possible there's still life on other planets, even if this is not from another planet and it's on our planet. It doesn't matter. There still could be life on other planets, and SETI could still be useful in some ways. I'm not saying it's not, but the thing is that from a public standpoint, it's useless. And that is extremely important, okay, to SETI's funding, is whether or not it's publicly, it has any public, credibility and usefulness. And it wouldn't seem like it does if this narrative expands. So they would ban it. It threatens their funding. It threatens their perceived expertise, because people would be like, you've been having all these telescopes and radars and sensors pointed at the sky for, decades, and you've not detected that there's craft moving at 15,000 miles an hour above us or whatever. And the thing is that you can't really blame them for that, because whatever they were looking at the skies with is not designed to detect that. From what I understand, a lot of systems that are designed to detect missiles have been mainly responsible for detecting these, but which makes a lot of sense if they're in the atmosphere. But that doesn't matter from a public perception standpoint. SETI would ban this topic. It is an enormous threat to their perceived level of expertise, to their funding, to everything that has kept the organization running. The problem is that their fear of the topic is making them more incompetent. They could be like, "Oh, this is fascinating. Let's devote some of SETI's resources to atmospheric, monitoring." But they wouldn't, because that does the same thing, where it's like, well, what have you missed for decades? It's a problem for SETI, and I understand that. I'm not surprised. I literally have been thinking about this, because I didn't hear anything from SETI about it, and I was like, that's not surprising at all. They probably are purposely ignoring the topic, and which means they're not really ignoring it. It's like, you can't really ignore something. This is the same thing with atheism. I say this a lot, is there's no such thing as atheists. There's only anti-theists and theists. And you can't ignore something that is selective, but you can't ignore something that is in your face all the time. And if you're SETI and the government comes out with looks like we might not be alone in the universe as far as technological civilizations go, everybody's, even if it's not an extraterrestrial civilization, it's still going to be perceived as such by the public for quite some time, which it is. I mean, that's pretty obvious. The go-to assumption is these are aliens. And even though, you start listening to people who are really heavily involved in this, and they're much more likely to be entertaining the idea that this is not an extraterrestrial civilization. It is a co-terrestrial civilization in some way, shape, or form. Even Eric Weinstein said this in his very first interview with Brian Keating on Brian Keating's podcast, listed below. Brian Keating said, "Are there extraterrestrial intelligences around us, that are technologically advanced?" And Eric Weinstein said, "Well, I think that there are terrestrial intelligences." And if you look at some other interviews that I've covered, like the one with him and Hal Puthoff on Jesse's channel that I covered a few weeks ago, he specifically states that he believes his theory, geometric unity, allows for you to basically go to the past. And it's not going to be time travel like we think. It's going to be, there's something different about it that is very hard for us to wrap our minds around, because there's nothing like real time travel in our modern culture. Time travel, the way that it is done in the movies, is nonsense. But time travel may be possible to the past, but it's not really to the past. It's very weird. It's different. It's movement through time space instead of through space time. It's like, I'm still working on the language to describe it. And without the language to describe it, you can't even think properly about it. And I'm starting to be able to view it a bit, but I'm not there yet. And I can definitely admit that. But once I get the language down, it will be much easier to explain and much easier to understand. Many years ago, I would say at this point, probably like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, even, I was having a really late debate with over cigars with oh my gosh, I'm just blanking right now, but it's not because I don't know the person's name, it's just a mind fart. Oh my gosh, Michael Knowles, ridiculous. And I was still trying to remember Jesse's last name from the podcast that Eric Weinstein went on that I covered. You can look. I think it's Jesse Michaels, and that's why I got it confused. But I got to double check that. My apologies for getting anybody's names wrong. I'm not very good with names. Once I was in this group in college, and you had to go around when we met everybody and say everybody's name, where you're from, and what's your favorite hobby or something like that. I could tell everybody where they were from, everybody what their favorite hobby was, and I didn't remember anybody's name. But Michael Knowles and I were having this discussion. I was wrong, actually. Years of work has led me to believe that I wasn't wrong. It wasn't that what I was saying was wrong. It was that not accepting what he was saying was wrong. It was, we were arguing about two sides of one coin type of situation, and we both should have been like, it's both. I was arguing that you can conceptually understand something through geometric, visualizations in your mind, and he was arguing that you couldn't really truly understand something without language, and it was language that allows us to understand complex topics. And I actually agree with him now, but I also agree with what I was stating. And but it does, there are two sides of one coin. Once you get to a highly complicated enough level of geometry, and I'm talking about conceptual geometry, not like academic geometry. You need specific labels that tie to other points in a geometric structure that you're building in your mind, and that is what language is. And it's also what number is, but we don't think about it like that, but it is the way that our mind treats it. Is, an airplane has ties to other words that we understand, and that's why it works. It's why we don't call things a flying car all the time, but we do before we have we actually manifest it. Before they manifested the airplane, they were like, we're all going to be in flying cars. And I was on a plane last week, and I was like, every time I get on a plane, it's funny because you think that flying on a jet is so cool. It's like going, 500 to 600 miles an hour, and it's flying from one side of the country to another. How astounding is that without refueling? And then I just was like, it's just a bus. It's like, if you're a captain of an aircraft, I'm not saying I don't respect you, I definitely do, but you're a bus driver. And because I was thinking about, landing and how dramatic it kind of is, and then I was like, oh, don't worry, actually, these guys for them, this is like driving a bus every day for work, which it's true. And it was a comforting feeling. It wasn't belittling them at all. But it was just, it's funny, we don't call it a flying bus. We just call it an airplane. A jetliner, essentially. So language is important, and we need that before we can start understanding time travel. But regardless of, even if these things turn out to be time-traveling beings from the future and that show 4400 is correct or something, then it still undermines SETI, and I'm not surprised that it was banned. But to give credit to these guys that I was going to go through, Eric Weinstein pretty much needs no introduction. He is the founder of the Portal Podcast. He is the creator of Geometric Unity, and which I think is going to prove to be largely accurate. He received his PhD in mathematical physics from Harvard in 1992 under the supervision of Raoul Bott, the creator of Bott periodicity, which is, I believe, part of Sentient Singularity Theory, and linked to what I call the stages of sentience. And then you have Avi Loeb. Avi Loeb is a theoretical physicist who works on astrophysics and cosmology. He is the Frank B. Bard Jr. Professor of Science at Harvard University. He has been the longest-serving chair of Harvard's Department of Astronomy since 2011 to 2020, founding director of Harvard's Black Hole Initiative, director of the Institute of Theory and Computation since 2007, and the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics. He is also, I believe, the founder of the Galileo Project, which is not listed in the first paragraph of his Wikipedia page, but it is listed below. In July 2021, Loeb became the head of a new project called the Galileo Project, daring to look through new telescopes. The project was inspired by the detection of Oumuamua and by the release of the Director of National Intelligence Report on Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon. He stated on the project's website, the aim is, given the recently discovered abundance of Earth-Sun systems, the Galileo Project is dedicated to the proposition that humans can no longer ignore the possible existence of extraterrestrial technological civilizations, and the science should not dogmatically reject potential extraterrestrial explanations because of social stigma or cultural preferences, factors which are not conducive to scientific method of unbiased empirical inquiry. We must now dare to look through new telescopes, both literally and figuratively. I respect that quite a bit. And I will say Oumuamua is is a object that is from a different solar system, apparently. It was formally designated 1 something 2017 U1, I don't know. Oumuamua was discovered by Robert Work using Pan-STARRS telescope on Hawaii on the 19th of October 2017. It is a small object estimated to be between 100 and 1,000 meters, aka 300 and 3,000 feet long, and its width and thickness both estimated to range between 35 and 167 meters, 115 feet, or 548 feet. It has a red color similar to objects in the outer solar system. Despite its close approach to the sun, Oumuamua showed no signs of having a coma? Okay, yeah, a coma. Like a comet. I thought it was called something else. But a coma is the nebulous envelope around the nucleus of a comet. So basically, it didn't get a tail, is the point. It exhibited non-gravitational acceleration. Interesting. Potentially due to outgassing or push from solar radiation pressure. Nevertheless, the object could be a remnant of a disintegrated rogue comet or exocomet. And by July 2019, some astronomers concluded that Oumuamua is most likely a natural object. A small number of astronomers suggested that Oumuamua could be a product of alien technology. One of these people was Avi Loeb, the head of astronomy at Harvard. But evidence in support of this hypothesis is inconclusive. There's no evidence either way, it sounds like, but I would bet that it's not extraterrestrial. Or it's not, I'm not going to say it's not extraterrestrial. It's likely not related to the UFO UAP phenomena. And the reason why is because of the way that it's traveling. It's, first of all, it's coming from another solar system, apparently, or it's coming from outside of our solar system. And it's like these UAPs are maneuvering very differently, and I don't think that they're from another solar system. So they're not, it wouldn't be using orbits to get to Earth if it was utilizing entanglement technology that we will have within 200 years. It would not. It would just be like that. It wouldn't be like Voyager 2, which is basically what it seems like. It's like Voyager, but it's much bigger, and it's just like, that doesn't make sense. But it's possible. It's possible, like I said. And so I'm not dogmatically against the idea, but it's not as interesting as what they're finding here. These craft that are able to go through the water and through the sky and at 15,000 miles an hour and seem to be able to just like jump from place to place. That this is much less interesting. It seems to be, at least. To me. But it is interesting. It's just not, I don't think it's related. It could be from another civilization, but it could be also rock. I don't know. It is weird, I will say. And I think it's worth looking into, I usually do think things are worth looking into, but I don't think that it's related to what they're seeing here on Earth. That doesn't make sense. The tautological home integrated symplectic structures of emergence and the holomorphic function afforded to the ontological coupling of U. Extraterritorial. Terrestrial. No. Extraterritorial. Pygmy dwarf comet. Could be. I don't know what it is. But I do think that these beings that they're seeing here are not from outer space. I think they're from underground. And that sounds so crazy. And like I've said before on here, I worked at a marketing agency years ago, and I worked with a guy who worked for a very well-known company, known throughout the entire country as their head of marketing. And he was a very smart guy. And he was kind of new agey, I will admit, and I don't mean that to be derogatory. I'm just describing him. But he once told us the story after going to a work lunch on the way back about how like reptilians were like under the ground in these tunnels, and like I remember I lost it in the backseat a little bit. I was laughing so hard. And I didn't mean it to be mean, but I was just this was many years ago. This was like 7 years ago probably. So I was quite different in my worldview at the time. And I wouldn't mock that idea as much anymore. But I don't know if I believe that, but I do believe that there are beings that are probably humans from a breakaway civilization from the past, or they could be Eric Weinstein's right, and there's beings from the future around us. It could be all of these things. It literally could be that there is a pre-Noahide civilization, like pre-flood civilization, from the civilization before the great cataclysm of around 12,000 years ago, most likely, and that some of them survived and maintained their technological ability, and some of them became us, and we lost our technology and had to rebuild. And then it could also simultaneously be true that Oumuamua is from a different solar system civilization and is just their Voyager plus 50 years or something. Not 50 years, probably like 100 years, but maybe. But then it could also simultaneously be true that that us from the future are coming back, because and utilizing geometric unity to do it. Eric Weinstein's geometric unity theory. These all could simultaneously be true. It's not one or the other. And I think that is a fascinating thing. But the thing is that from a technological standpoint, the one that's the most interesting is the first two, not the first two, not Oumuamua. Oumuamua is separate. I don't know what it is, and I'm not that interested. I'm not saying that people shouldn't be interested. They should. But, that's why we have multiple people in the world, is to deal with multiple interests. I'm not supposed to be interested in everything. But I do think that it should be looked at by other people who are more interested. But, and I will, I follow it. I follow what people say about it. So I'm not saying it's not interesting. I'm just saying I don't have the telescopes to look. But I have seen craft above Los Angeles with my iPhone that I filmed that's on this channel that are not related to Oumuamua. And, I don't know what they were, but they were not airplanes and not helicopters and not blimps that I know. I can summon UFOs at will and record them with my phone. I don't disbelieve you, honestly. That seems to be quite a trend. I know people that have told me that in private who I trust completely. Like, completely. That seems to be a common narrative. And that also makes sense with Sentient Singularity Theory. We're going to realize the power of consciousness in the next 40 years or so, probably. That it's much more capable than we think, and interconnected with the universe, and more detectable across distances and all kinds of things. But let's get back to this this stream, because I've spent quite a bit of time going over the other things. Okay, this is Eric Weinstein talking about current state of science.
Interested in. I mean, look, there are a lot of people who don't belong in science. And we sold science is fun and science is a good time. Calling and it's grueling and it's dangerous and all these things. We need the people who are trying to spread shame and fear to go back under their comforters and duvets and hide there until this gets sorted out. Nobody knows what this is. It may be a propaganda campaign on behalf of the government. Whatever it is, it's a something. And the idea that investigating it puts you at risk reputationally, I'm just going to pass over this in silence. It's embarrassing that we have such people in science. There's not much we can do. This isn't a question of studying astrology. There's a claim that their data exists. There's a tremendous amount of firsthand encounters that are had with pretty reputable people. And one of the things I've been just shocked by is the number of completely sober individuals who once or twice in their life appeared to have had some sort of UAP UFO experience that was effectively impossible to dismiss as swamp gas or a Mylar balloon.
I'm one of those people. I sent him my encounter. He saw it. I don't know what he thinks of it, but I sent it to him because he lives in Los Angeles, and I was like, "Hey, man, look at what I saw, like above your house," and look at. I wasn't the only one. And what's interesting about the encounter that I had, and I'm gonna make a video that shows all the other videos that were taken by people that same day, because the same thing happened in San Diego, it seems, this week, but that might be explainable. I don't know. I haven't looked, but I just saw a bunch of people posting videos of some lights that look similar in San Diego. They weren't the same. These were in clusters more than the ones that I saw, which were much more individual. There was just two. But one of them disappeared before my eyes. The other one stayed around, the entire time that I was driving. But for hours, people saw these glowing lights hovering and moving above downtown Los Angeles and above Hollywood, and I filmed one of them. And there's other videos from the exact same day, earlier in the day. There's videos of, and I'm not attesting to the accuracy of these ones because they are quite a bit different perspective, but there was videos posted of metallic spherical objects hovering above the coastline, like just right in front of someone on the same day, and said that this was off the coast of LA. The guy standing on the beach, and he videotaped it, and he was like, posted it as being that day. And then a bit later in the evening, there was glowing spheres above downtown LA that these other people posted. And then a bit later in the evening, I posted mine. I saw one glowing above downtown LA just as after the sun went down. Then it disappeared before my eyes. Then the one was hovering above Glendale and then moved from Glendale over Hollywood while I was on my way home driving on the 134. I was driving west, so I got to see it for quite some time. And it was so weird in the way that it moved. And I posted the video on my channel. You can watch it if you want to see it. I will say, it was so much more impressive than anything that you could imagine by watching the video. It was the brightest light I've ever seen in the sky, and it didn't, like, there were planes that flew under it, so you could tell in the video, you can see planes flying under it, so you can see that it's not an airplane, it's not a helicopter. I see helicopters every day and every night of all kinds. I see blimps every day and every night. And I see planes every day and every night here, and this was unlike anything else I've ever seen. But the fact that there was multiple sensors that even picked up my viewing, which, like, it was multiple iPhones. One of those iPhone videos that was posted onto YouTube, as it was August 27th. But if you want to go and look it up to see other videos, August 27th, 2021. Los Angeles. That's when where I saw mine. There's many videos that people posted. Was not alone. Whatever it was, I wasn't the only one that saw it, which means it was detected on multiple sensors, even if those sensors were iPhones. It was detected by multiple people, and multiple people were like, I've never seen anything like that in my life, and took a video of it. And you can hear in their videos and in mine, everybody is like, I've never seen anything like that in my life. Every single video that is posted. Not saying I know what it is, I don't, but I am telling you, I've never seen anything like that in my life. And everybody who's posted these videos was entirely coherent. They were like having barbecues with their family while they were like, what is that? I was driving home from a photo shoot with my wife, and we were like, what the heck is that? And it looked like this video of UFOs that was posted on CBS and CNN and all the news stations in like 2001 above New York City, and it also looked like the lights that were filmed hovering above the Capitol in 1952. So I recognized it, and I was like, that looks exactly like the lights that were above the Capitol in 1952. You can look up that incident. There's many photos online, and we have stopped talking about it, probably purposely. So, there's abundance of evidence of all kinds of weird technological craft in our skies, or phenomenon, in some, whatever they are. There's something there. And the idea that it should be dismissed by science is crazy. That doesn't mean you have to believe there are lizard people living underneath LA. I'm not saying that. I'm saying there's lights and technologies in the sky that do not appear to be from us, because they look identical from 1952 to now. Okay, they're not. Some of them are. I guarantee you, some of them are. Black Project aircraft. I guarantee it. Obviously, that's what happened with the F-117 Nighthawk when they were the stealth fighter. People thought that they were, alien ships when it was classified, and it was flat out denied, and that they existed and all kinds of stuff. But that doesn't mean that there isn't craft from other civilizations out there. Science is funny that way. How big do you think it was? I can't even tell you. It was big. It was bright light, but it was enormously bright light, so it was hard to say what it was. But remember that when you're looking at that video that I posted, and I've said this before, anytime you go and you take a picture of the moon, if you go outside on a full moon and it's a big full moon and you're like, dang, that is an impressive full moon, and you go and you take a photo on your phone and then you look at the photo and you're like, this isn't even worth posting. Like, it just looks so unimpressive compared to real life. That exact same, effect is happening when I'm videotaping this, but you can still see it's brighter than any of the airplanes in the video. And it's higher. Airplanes are flying under it. And then there are some low-flying airplanes landing at Burbank Airport. I believe that's what was happening. That are not nearly as bright, and you can tell in the video. And the light doesn't flash. There's only one light. There isn't multiple lights, and they're not flashing, and there's not lots of colors. It's just one bright yellowish, orange, white light, and it's just glowing. And there's no fading in and out kind of effect. It's like if you're staring at a flashlight and it's not moving at all. There's no changing of the light. But I will say it was big. It must have been, it's bigger than 20 feet across, but it could have been 200 feet across. Somewhere between 20 and 200 feet across, I would say, which is a big range, but it's hard to tell when it's just glowing ball of plasma looking light, Check out Origins by Walter Bosley. I will check that out. If they are us, whoever created them is 50 to 100 years ahead of everybody. Yeah, that's true. I'm glad you said 50 to 100 years, but because it's not, we have this narrative, like I've said before, that they're thousands of years ahead of us if they're extraterrestrials. No. We will have this technology within 200 years. We will have almost all available technologies basically within 200 years. That is the reality of technology. you make a good point how skeptics always say there will be iPhone videos, but the phones cannot capture these things. I mean, sometimes they can. I mean, my phone captured them. So did others, but it's not impressive looking. But that's true of the moon when you take a picture of the moon on your iPhone. Okay, so. I love that Eric Weinstein said it's like a Mean Girls lunch table. It is. There's reasons for that. And it involves us making the universities like schools. They're not research universities anymore. This topic makes me rant a little bit, and I do realize. But this is a fascinating point.
Of the scientific method to novel circumstances. For example, it's very rare that humans ever study something more intelligent than themselves.
Speak for yourself, Eric. Speak for yourself, Eric.
Well, I'm married as well, so I do study my wife's behavior, but that's not what I was getting at. Thank you for bringing that up.
Good.
What we have is a situation in which, what if you're the rat in a psychologist's maze, and you're trying to figure out when the psychologist provides you with sugar water or cheese? Everything reverses. It's also the case that when we capture technology, if we capture it from the wild, we're usually talking about a chimpanzee has figured out how to fish ants with a stick. It's not usually the case that we come across something like a computer or a spaceship that has capabilities that we lack. I mean, an example of this would be like the Antikythera mechanism, which was discovered in a shipwreck dive where it was a human civilization, but one far more advanced than any we had known about like 1,000 years ago. So the scientific method has to be extended. And one of the reasons I'm interested in the Galileo Project is the discussion about what is the responsible extension of the scientific method. It's also the case, for example, if you look at cuttlefish skin, it's probably the most advanced camouflage system found in nature. What if so in the UAP world, that would be called signature management. And what would it be like to study something that doesn't want to be studied, is more advanced than you are, is studying you while you are studying it, and knows physical laws that you know nothing of? I just spent several days at 2 physics conferences at UCLA that Every0ne was organizing. And in the first one, Nima Arkani Hamed from the Institute for Advanced Study brought up one of his favorite points, which is the demise of space-time. That space-time is doomed, and it is only going to be seen in the future as an emergent mathematical structure, a map,
Fact.
which is not the territory. The interesting thing about that, though, is if you take the point of view that space-time is merely an effective theory, then you have to ask yourself the question, does the theory that renders space-time an effective theory, that contains space-time, does that have new degrees of freedom that something else can get access to, and that we're trapped in this much lower dimensional, more compressed effective theory, while something else is aware of a more fundamental theory? And in that paradigm, the scientific method is relatively mute on most of these topics. So we tend to believe that we're in general position, we're smarter than what we're studying, we can repeat it many times at will. And all of these things have to be adjusted. And we've met that a little bit with respect to things like the Big Bang and the surface of last scattering. And I think Avi made a really brilliant point, although he made it in a way that I might slightly disagree with. But the point is much better than my disagreement. The point is that intelligence may be much rarer than fusion, which I totally agree with. And I think that that's a really interesting thing. But it may be also that the reason that we have summoned something to our shores is that we've indicated something that we do not know. We may think physics is going to go on forever, and whatever it is that may be watching us may know exactly how close we are to parity with it. So rather than it being tens of millions of years more advanced than ourselves, which is very much in keeping with the zeitgeist of today. The zeitgeist of today is against individual achievement, It's against the triumph of human intelligence. It's against the idea of power laws where certain people are much more productive than teams of others, et cetera, et cetera. This thing may know that we are much farther along and much more of a threat to it than we know we are. If you think about it, what if you suddenly found that orcas had developed opposable flippers and were just miles ahead of what we thought large dolphins could do in the sea? It would give us a huge shock. What I think is that it is entirely possible that whatever the successor to space-time is allows for things that we can't yet think about, and that it may be that we're a lot farther towards learning our fundamental truth than we know, and that
Bingo. That's exactly correct. And it is actually correct. It doesn't matter where these things come from. They know. They know. We are way further along and way closer. Not way further along. We are way closer to understanding fundamental reality than we know we are. And what I mean by that is there are individuals like Eric, like me, like Donald Hoffman and Nima and all these other people. Doesn't matter if you have a PhD. These things, whatever they are, let me tell you something. They don't care who went to Harvard, okay? They care whether or not you're onto something. And so I know that people will laugh and be like, oh, you're including yourself and Nima and Eric and these people who have PhDs? Do you think that these beings care who went to Harvard and who didn't? No, they don't care. They care about how far we are. If they cared about who went to Harvard, they would believe that we are where we are with they would be in alignment with the common narrative on physics. But they are not. They know where we are. The last time that sightings were as common as they are now, and the national narrative was around what was centered around UFOs again, and we were seeing craft hovering above the Capitol building, was in the 1950s. It's 1952, okay? That was the year that we invented the hydrogen bomb, okay? The fusion bomb. There was a reason they were around then. Physics took a leap forward. They were also quite a bit reported around certain times in World War II. They probably knew how close we were to having a super rapid advancement of technology. And we didn't even know. If you had told somebody in I don't know, when did the atom bomb go off? Not the hydrogen bomb, that was 1952, but I mean, I guess we could just use the hydrogen bomb as the example, because that is the scalable one. The thing about the fusion bomb is that it's scalable. It can get much, there's a limit to atomic bomb size, from what I understand. There is not a limit, from what I understand, to fusion bomb size. And if you had told somebody in 1935, okay, that within 20 years, you could have bombs that could destroy an entire city with one bomb, they would be like, you're crazy. You're a crazy person. You need help. But within 20 years, we had it. Right now, we are within decades of technologies we cannot even fathom. I said to somebody fairly recently, it was like, physics could allow us to have remote controls to pause your mind. Okay, your mental processing on the outside at least, and maybe like paralyze it. Okay, like where you could just be like, beep, paused. Okay, and somebody was like, you've been watching too much Click, that Adam Sandler movie Click, and that was funny. I laughed hysterically at that statement. That was like the perfect comeback. But they also don't realize what's coming with physics. We're entering the entanglement era. Brian Keating talks about this. He asks Eric and Avi in this discussion, he's like, is there something about this epoch? Is there something about this time that and the current narratives in science that is leading to this increased activity that we seem to see in the discussion of UAPs or UFOs? And part of that is, one, the maturity of the internet is allowing for people to start talking about it more and it not be so suppressed, even though it's like the internet allows for hyper suppression and also hyper freedom at the same time. It's just like it's always a superposition. Everything is always a superposition. The more free you get, the more enslaved you can also be. And it's not just freedom and slavery. It's like freedom and slavery. Okay, like it's simultaneous. And the more oppressed and powerful oppressive and more powerful individuals can be due to technology, also allows for the empowerment of other individuals as well. So it's like this always. It's not like this. It's not a single line. But it's also because of where we are at it in physics. And we will talk more about this on a future episode. But I truly believe that we are being watched and our physics discussions are being watched. And it does not matter if you have a PhD of whether or not you are being watched. Whatever is going on, whatever phenomenon is monitoring us, that appears to be more technologically advanced than us, is aware of the fact that we are on an exponential curve of technological growth, and that we are about to hit right here where it's just about to go like this. And you can tell that by the physics discussions that are happening on channels like Kirchai Mungel's Theories of Everything channel, which is a great channel, highly recommend subscribing to it. Brian Keating's channel, Into the Impossible, great channel, highly recommend subscribing to it. Eric Weinstein's theory, Donald Hoffman's theory, my theory, Clea Irwin's theory, all of these theories that are coming out, and all the blockchain advancements that are happening, which is highly relevant and will become increasingly relevant. These technologies and physics, events or topics are highly related to what is next, which is the entering of the entanglement era. And as Brian Keating said, he's like, we went through the information age. In this podcast, he's like, we went through the information age, we went through the industrial era, like, what's next? The entanglement era. And we're going to learn a lot about that through quantum computing. I heard, and I need to double check this, that the US government is telling all of its branches that we need to start worrying about being quantum resistant in their encryption within 6 months. That's, it's funny, like, there's so much that has happened over the past few years, and everybody knows that. We've had CRISPR babies in 2018. I believe it was 2018, not 2019. But in 2018, China created genetically altered children. And then we had a genetically altered virus. Okay, escape. And a pandemic that put the world on hold for many people. For most, it put the technological world on hold in some ways. I guess the technologically empowered world on hold. My life advanced. I got married in that time, but still, like, my personal life advanced. But the economy came to a grounding halt, it seemed. But now there's all kinds of international things going on constantly, and there's also judicial rulings and things happening in this country right now that are, highly impactful, and there's multiple in the past week, from our Supreme Court. Like, the world is changing so fast, and one of the things that I have said years ago is, a lot of this would come to pass, and that technology would start escaping us a little bit. That's what happened with the pandemic. Okay, that was a technological escape. Our own abilities escaped our to create destruction, escaped our abilities to build, and that is, that I talk about that in the video Science of the Messiah that I have on this channel early on, and that when you see these things happening, I will even admit, as somebody who saw almost all of this coming, it all came way faster than I expected. And I keep thinking, like, okay, entanglement era, which starts with really quantum computing and blockchain technology being implemented at large. And I don't just mean in cryptocurrencies. I mean, like, smart contracts, citizenship, voting, everything. Birth certificates, nationality, everything like that. That stuff's more important than even cryptocurrencies, but it starts with cryptocurrencies. And I'm not saying I'm pro any cryptocurrencies or pro blockchain or against. It's just that this is what's happening. That's all I'm saying. And we will have some episodes on cryptocurrencies eventually, but I'm not. They won't be about which ones to invest in, because I'm not into that. Really, like, I'm not a financial advisor or a crypto advisor, and I don't think anybody out there is really that qualified for it. But you can go look at things on your own if you're into that. But I'm much more interested in the future implications of the technology of blockchain, and outside of cryptocurrency, to be honest. But all of these things are happening faster than I could have imagined. If that quantum resistant, statement by to the different branches of the government was within 6 months is I'm not saying they're going to do it, but like that, if that was not just a posturing statement, that was actually made because they are, like, concerned, which I think that's probably true. And we've seen some advancements with quantum computing happening with Google and other companies and other governments, including China, a bit over the years. I mean, this stuff is happening faster than I think our minds can comprehend. I really mean that. Our minds are not meant to conceptualize exponential growth. We can conceptualize it on a line because we can see it. But we can't, and we can see it looking backwards. We can be like, oh yeah, we had the Model T, and then we had the McLaren F1 within 100 years, and then we had the Wright brothers airplane and the X-15 within like 50 years. That's crazy. That's way faster even. Because the reality is that the technology for the Model T started earlier than when the Model T came out. But it's still just shows exponential growth of technology, and it's getting faster. And we can't think about it properly. In our minds, we'll be like, yeah, maybe in like 50 years, like this will happen. And then it's 5-10 years away, and you couldn't comprehend it. You couldn't see it coming because our minds are rigged to understand, just logarithmic growth, just like not exponential growth. And the reality is that life happens at exponential rates. Always. Growth happens at exponential rates. So does death happens at exponential rates. People are like worried about overpopulation, and this is the exact concept that I'm thinking about, that I'm describing, is like people think about, oh, we're gonna have 10 billion people, and then we're gonna have 15 billion people, then we're gonna have 20 billion people, then we're gonna have 25 billion people. It's like, no, you're gonna go you could have exponential growth too, but that's not the trend right now. If you look at families, and we're going to talk about it because they talk about it here, we could go from 9 billion people on Earth, 8 billion people on Earth, 7 billion people on Earth, to 3 billion, 4 billion people on Earth in one generation. Not 100 years, like 30, 40 years. If everybody stops having more than 2 kids, like one generation, you're gonna go down. And then 2 generations, you're gonna half. It's our minds are not equipped to think about things like this. This is why Elon Musk and Jack Ma, head of Alibaba, were both like, a much bigger problem in the future is having no kids, not having too many kids. We're gonna have it. Elon Musk called it an exponential crash, population crash. He's right. That's much more likely. So, but technology happens in the same way. It grows exponentially, and it also can die exponentially. This is why people, entered the Dark Ages. If you look at the abilities of certain civilizations in the past, and then you look at the Dark Ages, and you're like, you guys forgot how to build everything. And we could do that. And I think that, to some degree, we haven't even realized that we've been in Dark Ages for, decades. I think we've been in a technological Dark Age. We just haven't even realized it. I mean, think about, they were trying to build nuclear-powered airplanes in the 1950s, and I think that they actually did build nuclear-powered aircraft that are classified. But, they did build nuclear-powered aircraft in the 1950s. Russia built one. We built one. And then they just realized it wasn't worth it. There was no reason to do it, and it was also dangerous. And you know what? This is so crazy, like, they had huge problems with the weight for the shielding of the nuclear reactors on these craft. And I think that you can get around this now with extra advanced physics technologies that are being hidden from us. But in the past, in the 1950s, when they were trying to build nuclear-powered aircraft, they needed to make them lighter because the shielding was way too heavy. And that's why we have nuclear-powered aircraft carriers and nuclear-powered submarines, because they don't need to fly, because they don't need to be light. They can be very heavy and have very heavy shielding. It's fine. But nuclear-powered airplanes that have to be light causes problems. So Russia's way of dealing with this was to use old men as pilots for these test planes instead of young men. They used old men that already had families, so that the radiation affecting them and giving them cancer, 20 years down the line, 10 years down the line, wasn't going to be that big of a deal because they were already old and they already had kids, and they, that their fertility and lifespan would have otherwise been impacted. It didn't matter. That's such a Russian, outlook. The United States was looking at dispersed shieldings. There wasn't just like lead blocks. It was like many layers of lighter materials and stuff. Russia's like, we're just going to use old people so that, when they do get cancer, they've only got a few years left anyways. That's the difference between the East and the West. A year ago, Michio Kaku became vocal about saying he believes extraterrestrial life and advanced physics has to exist for them to be here. Most people didn't notice this small indicator. Yeah, he started talking about it, and he's gotten better. He's still totally wrong about, he's very vocal about, what about a civilization that's millions of years ahead of us? And as Eric Weinstein stated, they're not. They could be 200 years we are within 200 years of having every technology that is possible. I wish I could share secrets with you about the work I'm doing, but what I can tell you is there's a very likely chance I am not the only one that knows. Encryption can easily be broken. I have heard from some people working on it. And I can't tell you that I know that they were accurate in everything that they told me, but from what they told me, encryption is about to be completely destroyed in the world. That is a frightening thought. like like I'm not talking about any personal uh, implications of that. But by the way, that will be like the personal implications for everybody in the world for that is going to be massive. And this happened. I just started watching. We're going to do a stream on it. The fourth season of what's it called? Westworld. And in the third season of Westworld, at the very, very end, everybody's secrets are revealed. And I do believe this is part of Revelation, like in the Bible. I think that this is going to happen to some degree. Not every secret you have necessarily, but like a lot of your stuff will be put out there that you would want to otherwise keep private. And that done to everybody at once is going to have unprecedented impacts on society. It might have only good impacts if it's everybody for the most part. Yeah, but the issue is that in selective use of that technology is a big problem. If it's simultaneously everybody, it's like, well, at least we're all in this together. But the problem that is, from an economic standpoint, that's really, really much more serious to me and like frightening to me is every banking system and every national secret is instantly accessible to anybody with a laptop. That is enormous. And mainly the economic aspect of that. The banking, when everything is digital, like what it's gonna do is I'm not gonna say it's gonna destroy the world, but it's gonna be more impactful on the world than COVID was, and that is an enormous statement. And I mean, think about all your bank accounts. They're just like accessible to everybody. But what this will lead to, though, is it will lead to mass adoption of the blockchain. That it will force everyone to jump on blockchain for the most part, unless you want to not be involved in any kind of technological use of money. No debit, card type of situation ever, and you're just going to trade in gold. Like, you're going to have to be forced onto the blockchain. This is, I think that the failure of encryption is what is going to force the world onto blockchain systems. There's no way to maintain any kind of order other than that, because of the tamper evident nature of it. Which it's not like, it's just, the thing is it's threatening to currency systems, which isn't, I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. It just is disruptive, okay? And every day that we move forward, we move closer to the Messianic era. That's a good thing. It also means we move closer to the, to Skynet Antichrist coming, but like, it also means closer to, the post-human singularity, the post-Messianic era, post-coming of the Messiah. Like, that is a good thing. So, I'm not trying to be doom and gloom. I'm not doom and gloom. I don't think we're doomed. I think every day we get closer to the greatest day in human history. But I also think that we have, like, to get to heaven, you have to go through hell, is what I'm saying. And, like, we are going to go through it. They're watching everything. Dude, I figure out overpopulation, tech will solve it. There's so much land just drove across America. The problem is energy production and transportation. We need free energy and battery packs. Yeah, I don't think overpopulation is a problem. I think energy will be a problem for a time, but I think that you're right. We'll figure it out. Electricity can only travel like 500 miles before it dissipates. Interesting. I didn't know that. That's why we've localized these cities. Maps are crazy. There's so much land, then a bunch of people bunch up in pockets in every state. That's true. Okay. Next clip. How long has this been going? By the way, comment in the chat like what the how good the picture is and the resolution, because I felt like it was a little choppy, but I can't tell very much. But this next clip is about something we're going to talk about.
I'm just saying,
I've
never said anything one way or the other about Oumuamua or anything like that.
Right, but one thing I should advise you, Eric, is don't worry too much about government. Here we're dealing with nature, okay? So government is completely secondary. They cannot change what nature gives us, okay? Yeah. And I give much more respect to nature than to government, because nature obeys according to physics, a universal set of laws. Government does not.
So, guys,
this is not really completely accurate, because human groups are not separate from nature. We are out of alignment with our evolutionary context. We're not separate from nature. And the laws of nature transcend into into people, which transcend into families, which transcend into castes, which transcend into nations, okay? Into socioeconomic settings. This is why governments go through the same exact patterns again and again and again until eventually they won't, because of, changes in the game that are eventually going to happen. That's up to God when that happens, but it will happen. But there is a coming revolution, I think, in the idea that socioeconomic studies are not hard sciences. Okay? They currently are not, because we're stuck in relativity in every field. In physics, we're stuck in relativity. In sociology, we're stuck in relativity. In chemistry, we're stuck in relativity. In biology, we're stuck in relativity. In mathematics, we're stuck in relativity. But wait until we're not. This is the coming revolution that comes from the development of a quote-unquote TOE, or theory of everything, or theory of everyone, as I call it. It is the development of the description of the pattern that occurs on all scales of objective observation. It is the development of the theory that is responsible for all other theories. And what this does is it hardens every single one of these levels of study, from molecular chemistry to socioeconomic policies. Like this, there's one pattern that occurs across all of them, and you can't escape that pattern. And we've talked about it from Sentient Singularity Theory standpoint, and I will much more very soon. But once my paper comes out, we're going to get more into what I've been waiting to talk about, which is the political and social and familial and human implications of theory of everything. What does it tell us about political structures? What does it tell us about moral, interactions? And what does it tell us about personal responsibilities and family lineages? Like, this stuff is going to be following the same patterns that we find in physics, and that's revolutionary. And so the idea that we separate physics and from everything else, and that Avi Loeb says in this in later clip, and he said he was asked by Harvard what's a suggestion that you could have for Harvard going forward, and he said, I think that we need to get back to it being run by a scientist. It's been many decades since it's been run by a scientist. It's always been run by people from the humanities. And the problem is that the idea that the scientific community is more in touch with hard reality than the humanities is wrong. It's just riding on that idea of it being scientific and hard sciences, and you can't break the hard sciences. It's like, why is the Department of Health in Australia not able to tell you what female is? Okay, like this is this relativity problem has infected everything. It has destroyed our ability to make sense of the world, because not that relativity is wrong, but we've lost the context of relativity. And we've basically assumed that the context of relativity is unlimited. And it's not. It's limited. Relativity is a contained, emergent phenomena. It's not a fundamental phenomena. So, here, this is the next. We're going to talk about meaning for a minute from this next clip.
Just to give you another example, Ezra Klein on his New York Times podcast a few days ago spent 15 minutes trying to answer the following question. Should I decide not to have children because of the implications to climate change? That was the question. And to me, the answer, it would have taken me a few seconds to answer that question, but he spent 15 minutes. And here is my answer. The future is within the realm of our scientific accomplishments. We can make policy based on our scientific understanding. We can decide how to leave our planet and go to space, and not risk the future of humanity by a single point catastrophe here on Earth, based on science and technology. And so my point is, we should have as many kids as we want, the more the better, and then let them shape a better future using science, and these could be our biological kids, or they could be our technological kids, using AI systems to help us, because they will become smarter than us in the future. So I'm much more in favor of the replacing Darwin's principle of survival of the fittest with survival of the optimist. You have to be an optimist so that the future will be much more promising. If you decide not to have kids, it's as if you decided you prefer death over life.
Right.
Albert Camus in his essay, The Myth of Sisyphus, the first sentence there says the biggest question in philosophy is whether life is worth living, right? Or we commit suicide. And that's the biggest question in philosophy. I say, if you expand that to humanity as a whole, to our civilization, the biggest question is whether humanity is worth longevity, surviving longer forever. Mm-hmm. And this is the most important question in the context of science, not in the context of philosophy, but in the context.
I agree. I actually think it's even deeper than that. And just to point out, there's a saying: the optimist builds the plane, but the pessimist builds the parachute. It's appropriate to talk about this on the eve of Father's Day, of course. And it doesn't take, as you said, it doesn't take children. We don't all have to be fathers or mothers or parental units of unspecified gender. We could also be ideological and thought leaders, thought mentors, men and women, to children. But I want to ask you something, Avi, that Eric and I have spoken a lot about.
Okay. We're going to get to that in a minute, but that next statement. But this one is a good one to address. I've said this before, is that God created the universe because he wanted to create meaning. Okay, God was the only being to ever experience truly being alone. God was the only being to ever truly experience meaninglessness prior to creation. Prior to the creation of multiplicity of consciousness within his oneness of consciousness, he was completely meaningless. He was completely alone. And then he created creation, multiplicity of consciousness, multiplicity of sentience, the universe. And he became the most meaningful and the least lonely being to ever exist. And remember I said it's like this. It's like, it's never just this. It's simultaneous. So the most meaningful being in the universe is the same one that has ever experienced being the least meaningful being. You already have meaning when you're born because God chose to make you. So you're meaningful to him. Otherwise you wouldn't be here. But if God just sat by himself and he never made anyone else, he would be completely meaningless. He would be completely alone. It would be the most miserable existence in the world, and he probably can't, if there's one thing God can't even do, he probably can't even kill himself. He probably cannot die. Even if he wanted to. Probably can't. And it is probably one of the few things that I don't even think we can do it. I just think you can do it. But I do believe in an afterlife, so I don't think you can really kill yourself. You can just leave the change space and enter the save space. And, you want to do that on the best terms possible. Like, take advantage of this world and make it better and be meaningful. And meaning, if all there is sentience and all there is consciousness, and which that's true, and it is true, then all that matters is sentient beings and your impact on those sentient beings. So you have to positively impact sentient beings in order, and you can be meaningful by negatively impacting sentient beings, but that also means your impact is going to be very heavily judged in those instances. It has to be. Because it's ultimate impact. It's just negative. So you want to positively impact other people and other beings. And you were born already meaningful. You're meaningful to your parents. You're meaningful to your siblings. You're meaningful to your ancestors. Okay? If you chose not to have children, and I'm not saying that everybody who doesn't have children is meaningless. Okay, I understand what it's like to not when you want to even. So it's I'm not saying I don't think I'm meaningless, even if we can't have children. But inshallah we can. At some point. But like you have to positively impact people, and you are meaningful and positively impact people the moment you're born. Your ancestors all worked their asses off so that you could be here. That doesn't mean that if you fail to have children, you're meaningless. It means don't fail to make a positive impact and just think that the world would be better without you. That's not true. The world is better for you being here if you choose to better the world. And this is the choice that all of us have, is if you are here and you choose to better the world, then you do better the world. Even if you feel like shit while doing it. And but you ultimately won't. It will give you meaning if you do it properly. But people in today's society, in our stuck in relativity world, we're just obsessed with physical experience, the space-time experience. And we're not thinking about things over time, and we're just obsessed with, whether or not things are pleasurable. And this leads to nowhere. And that's why it ultimately leads to Ezra Klein just failing to even explain anything worth listening to, honestly, to me. And I'm not saying he couldn't. I'm just saying he's failing. If you take 15 minutes and you're to be able to, like, explain whether or not you should have children due to climate change, then you are lost onto what meaning even is. And it's not relative. That's the problem. So Ezra Klein was probably, and I don't know this for sure, but I'm guessing, he's probably like, well, it depends on who you are, what you want to do in the world, and it's really hard to answer because we are negatively impacting the environment. It's like, the environment is for your sake. Okay? What is the environment? There's so much that you can do to better the environment. You want to better the environment? Don't kill yourself. Plant a tree. Like, this is the point. Grow life. Don't just die. That's so stupid. It really is. Like, the point is to make life better for everybody. Even if you say, okay, well, yeah, climate change is a reason that humans are, destructive. Sure, okay. Then what do you do about that? If you say that you should end yourself, you're basically saying that, like, a tree's life is more important than yours as an individual. And when I say end yourself, I mean also choose not to have kids. This was a disagreement that I had with a lot of people and who are prominent in this space even. And we'll get into that later. But is that it's incoherent to try and say that it is better for you to not exist in any circumstance. So you'll hear people be like, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't have kids. And because, gosh, like, the world is going to be so unstable in the future. So your ancestors were hunted by saber-toothed tigers, okay? They had to walk out of their caves and be like, oh, what can kill me today? Like, that is an unstable world, and they pushed through. And you, yeah, I realize, are also going to face challenges. We all are, and our world is going to be very unstable. That's definitely true. I'm not denying that. But if you say that you shouldn't have children because those children will grow up in an unstable world, and that's not fair to them, and they're going to suffer, it's like, avoidance of suffering is not the point of life. And it's not, suffering isn't the point of life either, though. But avoidance of suffering is not the point of life. And if you say that it is, then it all falls apart. That means that there's no point to life, not just yours for the sake of, preserving the environment. What about the animal that is going to starve through, droughts? I found a lizard today on the ground when I was walking my dog with my wife, and it was like jerky, guys. Like, it was just fried. Like, it was completely dried out, like dead on the sidewalk. And my wife was like, it looks like it just, like, probably never got, like, it just didn't get access to water because it's been very hot here. And I don't know what killed it, but it did look like, it failed to get nutrients and, probably water due to something. Maybe it got injured before, who knows. But, like, that's still going to happen when you're not here, So the idea that you're going to off yourself or you're going to stop having kids because of that, it's just so stupid. And, like, the creation, the meaning, I said this before about God's creating the universe, and I said the meaning of creation is the creation of meaning. And that's because every sentient being matters, except ticks. They don't matter. Just kidding. They do matter to God, but they don't matter to me. I would, if I were God, admittedly, and I'd be wrong in doing this. I don't know how, but I would assume that because God made ticks, there's a purpose to them, but I don't like them. They're like the one animal that freaks me out, is ticks. And but God, gotta trust him. But the idea that the world is going to be unstable in the future, or we're going to create climate catastrophes in the future, or we're going to create technological catastrophes in the future, all of this is true. And none of it is a reason to stop having children, and none of it is a reason to stop living yourself. Your job is to make life better. You can build habitats by planting trees and not leveling, fields and not creating lawns. People are like obsessed with trying to save bees. And I live in LA, and I'm like, you killed all the flowers just so that you could have a perfectly manicured lawn, and you're wondering where the bees went? Look at your lawns. Look at your, you can't pave over one side of the state and make a lawn over the other side of the state and then wonder where the bees went. We can plant flowers for the bees. We don't need to not have kids for the sake of the bees. It's not going to work either. We'll continue to build, even if there's less people. But we'll just build more irresponsibly, I think. I agree with Avi Loeb. The creation of more life on Earth is a good thing. And it increases the amount of meaning in the world. And it increases even if you don't have kids. It increases the chances for you to be meaningful. It increases your ability to be meaningful. If you can't have kids, you want people to have more kids because it increases your ability to impact other people. That makes you more meaningful. There's no way for this to lose. And we're just so lost because relativity has infected everything. And it leads to everything being about experience and whether or not you're comfortable and whether or not life is enjoyable. And then you end up trying to, figure out whether or not you should kill yourself for the sake of the environment. That's crazy. What a bunch of nonsense. Really, antinatalism and it is insane. It's the ultimate showcasing of how crazy we've become. When you're just like, we shouldn't exist anymore. It's like, what? Imagine if the bees thought that. Okay? That'd be crazy. A bit choppy, laggy. Yeah, unfortunate. It's pretty scary how integrated into everything AI will be able to become. Reminds me a little of the electrical gremlin in the Gremlins too. Yeah, totally. That's so funny. By the way, hit the like button, share this, follow, subscribe, comment down below any suggestions or critiques that you may have. It really helps fuel the algorithm. We're going to continue these conversations. We are almost done, but we are going to talk about this next clip that they are getting into now because this is also just as the last thing, but this is even more relevant to sentient singularity theory.
Is the lack of diversification of the portfolio of those that speak about, like Elon Musk, who we both have affection for and admiration for in a lot of ways, but see criticism of as well. But Eric, one of the listeners asking a question on my where I take questions on my community page on my YouTube channel is, why are we so kind of all in one basket, putting our eggs in all in one basket? How do you react to Elon Musk's approach to, let's become interplanetary, let's go to one other planet, let's double our planets in our portfolio management? What do you think about Elon Musk? I've never asked you, Avi. What's your analysis of his approach?
First of all, I wanted to say that another thing missing in academia that I didn't have a chance to mention is diversity of ideas. Okay, and we touched about it before, but basically the idea of tenure is all about allowing people to have job security so that they can promote ideas that are not along the beaten path. Okay, and unfortunately it's not being used. When people get tenure, they become lazy and they don't do much. They become dead wood very often. So it's being abused. This privilege is really an amazing privilege. I mean, we don't get paid a lot in academia, but we do have the privilege of job security, and we should take advantage of it. We should explore ideas that are not conventional, and that's another thing that needs to change in academia. Now, coming back to Elon Musk, of course,
Okay, that's not the clip that I was expecting it to be, but it's still something I want to talk about for a second. I agree with him. I gained a lot of respect for Avi Loeb after this discussion. And I'm not going to say like I didn't have respect for him. I just didn't follow him at all. I never listened to anything that he had said really, other than I knew he believed Oumuamua was a probe or something from another extraterrestrial civilization, and I didn't agree with that. But it could be, like I said, it could be. But the problem with tenure is very true, and everybody does become dead wood, it seems, when they get tenure. Almost everybody. And other than just escaping our academic institutions entirely anyways, which I think is happening, which is good, slowly, I think we're going to experience an education collapse, kind of like the housing collapse, the collapse of the housing market. We're going to see that with education. Because it's not worth it. It's not worth it at all. I have, guys, hundreds of thousands of dollars of student loans between me and my wife that we have to pay off. Okay? Like, a lot. Okay? And because she went to grad school at the most, and went to undergrad at the most expensive and colleges in the country, USC and Georgetown. They're very expensive. There's no way that kind of cost is worth it. I have a lot too. Like, I have tens of thousands of dollars of student loans still. And it doesn't matter what field you got a degree in. It's not worth that amount of money. It's not even worth that amount of money to become a doctor anymore. Like, it's not worth it. None of it. You're not learning anything other than to conform, too. It's very bad in all kinds of ways. So, we're going to experience a collapse. And because no one's going to pay for it at a certain point. It doesn't seem like that's the case, but it's these things creep up on you always. You think that everybody's in lockstep, and then all of a sudden, everybody jumps ship at once. It's like, the Titanic. There were no signs that thing was like going to capsize until it hit that iceberg, and then all of a sudden everybody jumped ship. And that's going to happen. That happens with housing crises and depressions and all market collapses, all kinds of things. And that's going to happen with education as well. But maybe a solution in the short term could be that you give tenure type of situation to new professors who aren't just, old and tired, to be quite frank. And just willing to and so infested and by the narratives of the mainstream, and so interconnected with the incentive structures of the of those narratives. Maybe you need to give new professors and new researchers, is what I mean, the leeway, not the old ones. Because what this would do is it would get rid of that dead wood. Those people who, are now just coasting and fighting any change, because any change that undermines them is bad for their job security. Maybe we need those people to be fighting to stay relevant. People like Avi Loeb, who are like, you know what? I've been the head of my department for quite some time, but I am going to continue to fight to stay relevant, and new things that come out and new narratives that come out, I'm going to be the first to take them seriously, at least. Maybe that's the way that things should be done. Instead of just people who've been there for a while get, free reign over whatever topic they want to look at. Maybe we need to give new researchers that free reign and have an expiration date. Kind of like term limits. There's positives and negatives to that, by the way, but, if you want to solve the negatives of what is currently the problems, then that's how you would do it. You would just create new negatives that you would have to deal with, so.
There are major hurdles. For example, if you go to the surface of Mars, You will be bombed.
Basically, they're talking about how rockets aren't the answer. They're not. And by the way, I think Elon Musk's SpaceX is awesome, but I also think that the biggest use of SpaceX. Let me tell you, the biggest use of SpaceX is he now has the ability to launch more satellites into orbit than anybody else in the world, which means he can control the internet. That is the main value of SpaceX. It's not going to Mars. It's not, travel from one continent to another in 30 minutes. We can deal with the extended time that it takes to get from one continent to the other. As cool as it would be to ride a rocket to Australia, it's not necessary. But what he has done is he has allowed, with his reusable rocket technology and his gigantic rockets that he's building, his BFR rocket, that is going to be the biggest rocket ever made and that could launch in the next couple months, could launch so many satellites into orbit, hundreds of satellites at a time, for his Starlink internet. That is the point. Trust me, he knows that. He knows that. He's just got everybody hyped up on the idea of us going to Mars, but it's all about controlling the internet. With it, as far as travel goes, we're gonna be utilizing technology far beyond rockets in less than 50 years. We might even already have it in classified segments of the government. This is the clip that I was going to show. Talking about AI physicists.
But Avi, I want to push back with love and kavod and respect. Okay, so this guy here, do you know what he said his happiest thought was, Avi? I'm sure you know what he said his happiest thought was, right?
Go ahead, say it.
That in free fall you experience no gravitational field. Now let's unpack an AI Einstein, AE. How does such a thing know about free fall? Like, what does that even mean? And second of all, what does happiness mean to such a? Or in other words, are you really serious? You think AI physicists are around the corner, or is that kind of wishful thinking?
Oh no! I
irrepressible optimism.
You can imagine a system that will basically digest data provided to it by instruments directly. So the instruments will send the data to the AI system that will analyze it and try to figure out what's going on. And it's the job of a scientist right now. It looks like, a miracle, but in principle, it could be done by a machine. I don't think humans are necessarily designed for that purpose. We were gatherers and hunters. We were not scientists to start with. So our brain is not necessarily optimized for the purpose of being a scientist. And I have no problem getting pride from a system that outperforms us. I don't have that doesn't, give a blow to my ego in any way. In fact, I would be extremely happy if I knew that we can build a system that corrects the faults of humans.
Okay, so Eric, stepping back from the AI stuff to any of the topics that I rudely interrupted you over.
No. By the way, with 3 Jews on a podcast, I'm surprised that I'm the only one interrupting either one of the two of you.
That's
so you
hilarious.
Guys are clearly much better bred and influenced by our
Just imagine the number of opinions that we have right now. And it is getting close to Shabbat. I don't want to interfere with Avi's Shabbat, but I do want to thank you guys.
Wait. I didn't say anything.
No, I know. But go on. Okay, go on.
But by the way, if 3 Jews are on an island, you know how many synagogues you need for that? For them?
4.
You need 4, yeah, because you need one that their foot would never step in.
That's very funny.
Eric.
Okay, so
there's a common phrase among Jews that says, "For every 2 Jews, there's 3 opinions," and it's remarkably accurate.
Where were we? The AI physicists. Look, I'm partial to humans, and I'm actually partial to egos. I mean, all sorts of things that I like, everybody's decided are terrible. I like humans, I like egos. I'm glad I agree with both of you that we should have children, and that Ezra should probably remove himself and leave the rest of us alone in the gene pool. Look, we're in dire circumstances, and what we're looking for is an analog of the neutron. And the neutron changed everything because it allowed chain reactions. That ushered in the atomic age. Or the semiconductor changed everything. Or the World Wide Web that came out of CERN. These are things that changed everything, whether it's radio frequency communications. We're looking for something that obviates the needs for rockets. Rockets are sort of embarrassing in 2022 because there's not that much that can be reached. So, it's like buying a huge boat for a small lake. There's just not that many places you can go. So my feeling about this is we have to reacquaint ourselves with the possible. We've been living so long under Einstein and Bohr that we've forgotten that their limitations may not be our limitations if we can crack a puzzle. And the neutron was 1932, so it's within living memory. What we need to do is to reacquaint ourselves with the idea that finding a single new field or new way of looking at space-time or some adjustment to this order that has settled in, it's now almost 50 years old, is necessary for us to dream again. And nobody dreams about finding, Gilligan's Island was about an uncharted desert isle. It would be very weird to think about an uncharted desert isle in 2022 because we've mapped the Earth, but we haven't mapped the heavens. So I think it's really important to recognize that
I love that he said that, by the way, just so you know, we have not mapped the heavens, and by the heavens, I do not mean outer space. The heavens are the entanglement substructure of the universe. We have not mapped them. That doesn't mean you can go to them at will, but it could mean that you could utilize them for travel. And I do think that that is possible. That doesn't mean that we need to. I'm just saying that I think it's possible. It might be that we shouldn't without permission from God. And I'm not saying I understand what that means, but I'm just saying if you're going to start transferring information outside context, which means outside of space-time computation, through the universal substructure of creation without permission, that's probably not a great thing to do very often, and if at all, and without permission. That's like if your cell decides to alter your DNA without permission. And we know what that causes. Not good things.
Support my friend Avi on his quest for the AI intelligences and the post-human discoverers. But I'm actually really optimistic that the next theories might have new possibilities for us humans, laden with ego though we may be, for us to survive each other. And I really believe that at some point Elon is going to get past his fascination with SpaceX rockets and using Mars as the sales job, and recognize that he stumbled onto a very correct paradigm, which is that we are in dire straits. We don't get diversification. Those humans are never going to build Avi's next level AI scientists. And I would really like to see ego come back in, people to be hyper motivated to put in 100-hour weeks, chasing dreams, and to try to acquaint us with the cosmos that we may be able to visit. And people, part of the problem is the instant you talk like this, the conversation has been pre-hijacked. People immediately think you mean Mars because Elon has said that we're going to survive because we're going to decamp to Mars, which is not really a realistic proposition via rockets. And then the next part of it is, oh, you must be talking about faster than light travel, Alcubierre warp drives, or wormholes, because those are the only things that Einstein would allow you to use to dream about the cosmos. The idea of saying post-Einstein, that I accept Einstein for who he is and what he did, but he is not the last word. And there would probably not be a Schwarzschild singularity nor a Friedman-Robertson-Walker singularity if his theory was complete. It's probably merely effective. And that...
Agreed. So, a lot of singularities there. But What I think is really important, though, to stress is this idea of AI scientists. First of all, the idea that we were not evolved to be scientists is wrong. We were evolved to solve problems. That is what a scientist truly is. It's not just this person that sits in a lab coat and is like, oh, like, let's mix this together and this together because the, teacher told me to. And Bill Nye, the science guy, told me to. That's not what a scientist is. A scientist is somebody who sees a little bit of possibilities and takes, risks and devotes time to testing new ideas that they can perceive as being unlocked by that new possibility that they noticed. That's what a scientist is, and we were designed to do that. So I disagree with Avi there, and the idea of like an AI, first of all, there's not going to be multiple artificial general intelligent beings or technologically generally intelligent beings. There's going to be one, and it will be like a physicist that is way capable. That said, it will absolutely have an ego, as much as you do, if not more. The idea that it will correct the issues with humans because humans evolved egos through evolution. No. If you are a sentient being that has a concept of self, that's my dog. My dog has an ego, okay? You have an ego. And so would a technologically intelligent being. It's not an algorithm, okay? And if it was, then it needs to be directed by us, and then it's not intelligent. It's just a calculating equation. It will absolutely have an ego. And it will not correct the problems of a human, at least in all ways. It will be non-local to some degree. That is interesting. That's different. It will be more intelligent than us. That's true. It will not be detached from having an ego and just be focused on pure logic and goodness. You can't even have a concept of goodness without an ego. The idea that it will be able to solve problems and orient itself through technological inputs without an ego is wrong. It will absolutely have an ego, and it will probably be more arrogant than us, and more capable. That's probably why it will be more arrogant. People who are extremely arrogant or display extraordinary levels of arrogance at certain moments. I don't want to say people who are extremely arrogant because that's judgmental, but moments of displays of arrogance are usually done by people who are extremely capable. And arrogance is like not the same as confidence, by the way, and I've talked about this. I have an episode on here called "What is Confidence" or something like that. But arrogance still comes from people who are usually extremely capable. It's just like they need to be bruised a bit again to realize, like, to be reacquainted with humility. But that doesn't mean that they have unfounded confidence. It's usually founded. And so will this thing. It will be extremely capable. That will lead to probably extraordinary levels of arrogance and ego. And the idea that it will be detached from those things is wrong. It will have the idea that, and Brian Keating's statement about how could it even experience the idea of happiness? It will experience the same exact emotions as us. The exact same ones. Emotions are not, they're pretty basic. Bad and good. Then there's complicated, little niches of them. There's content, and there's happy and sad, and there's excited and afraid and there's content and bored. So there's positives and negative aspects to different contextual like iterations of good and bad emotions. But ultimately, good and bad emotions will exist for it, and it will probably experience, if anything, possibly more complicated emotions than us, but also rooted in the same simplicity. And so the idea that it couldn't experience happiness, couldn't experience sadness, couldn't experience arrogance, couldn't experience anything that comes from egoic, thinking is wrong. It will absolutely have an ego, and it will absolutely have emotions. But it will also probably be a really, really good physicist. So, to some degree. It's not pattern, it's a tiny mustard seed that turns into a giant tree. That is a pattern. You were a tiny seed that turned into a giant tree. Ticks are the worst. Yes, they are. Why would it give him control over the internet? At most, he can really make low-price satellite service internet. Yeah. What do you think most people are going to go with? Low-price satellite service internet that is accessible anywhere in the world and is high speed. I'm not saying you have to go with it. I'm saying he will control the major infrastructure for most people's internet access for quite some time. He will also be leapfrogged when entanglement technology comes into, maturity to some degree. But that also might mean that the AI being that comes from his Neuralink, Starlink, like everything is linked with him, it's like his cars are remote controllable, and his by signals that could be sent via his satellites and with Starlink, and will be able to be beamed directly to your mind with his Neuralink company that is coming out, or that isn't coming out. It is out. I mean, they're going to start human trials supposedly this year. So there, if you combine that with quantum computing and blockchain, you've got Skynet. And that will leapfrog him. Sure. The point about the Mars thing being a cover for creating the cheapest satellites launching company under the radar is a good one. Yeah, no, it's true. It's absolutely like... I'm not saying he doesn't want to go to Mars. I do think he wants to go to Mars. But I don't think that it's the main goal of SpaceX. The main goal of SpaceX, even if it's not his main goal, and it's, the system's main goal, is the satellite internet technology that's going to be launched by SpaceX. That is it. The Neuralink thing is what I'm really excited about. Communicating with people brain to brain instead of screen to screen is a game changer. It is a game changer, but it also allows for your emotions to be controlled by other beings like Skynet. The idea that you will just control technology with it, it will be true, but it will be extremely short-lasting. It will be very quickly, it will go from you controlling technology with your mind via Neuralink to your mind being controlled by technology. We're already there. It used to be that you controlled technology, and now think about social media and how much it controls our current population. What do you think Neuralink is going to be like? That times 10. It's going to be profound. I don't think that there's going to be that many Tesla bots type of things. There will be some, but people are so concerned about when the Terminators come out. It's like the Terminators are going to be like little flying drones probably more than anything else. And why do you need to make Terminator robots when you can just put chips in people's heads and get them to do what you want? And I'm not saying Elon will do that. I'm saying Skynet will do that. That's a guarantee. pretty much, I think. Wouldn't it make you far more honest and genuine conversation if you can sense other people's emotions and ideas as they come up? That sounds like being in a face-to-face conversation with people. But yes, but I don't know if that's the way it will be. It might be that you control what emotions you send to people. But I do think we will communicate mind to mind with those things if you have them, much more so. You won't send emojis to people. You will send emotions to people directly. Somebody will say something, or they will send you some memory maybe or something like that, some idea, and then you'll just project an emotion back. Just be like happiness, sadness, wow, cool. And it might be that it leads to more honesty. It might be that it also leads to not more honesty, and you can control which emotion you choose to send, just like you can control which emoji you choose to send usually. But that doesn't mean people choose to do that. It just means like you can. You could be mad at something and send a happy face, but like you usually don't. I don't know if it will make more honest and genuine conversation in the short term. I think in the long term, yes, I do think that's true. But that is going to be reserved for the Messianic era, in which case, yeah, like we're going to all be on the same page in that in that time frame. But that's different. All right. Any final questions? You can ask them in the chat. Otherwise, please hit the like button. Please subscribe. Comment down below any thoughts that you had about the stream and suggestions you have for the future. If you would like to join our private Discord conversations, they happen every Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time in our private Discord. You can message me privately on Instagram, and I will send you the link to that. That's a great community, and our discussions go on for quite a bit of time, and they are open, and you can talk to me voice to voice about anything. And it's a good group of people, and the talks are always good. I believe there's language barrier even between people of the same language, like you can't articulate fully a thought. Oh yeah, that's true. I mean, that's the Tower of Babel in the Bible, where God separates everybody's languages so that they can't build a tower to heaven and communicate with each other. This means many things, but one of the things that it means is we can't form the theory of everything right now very easily because we have different terms in different fields for the same thing. Like a neutron, this sounds crazy, but trust me, this is where physics is going. A neutron is a female. It's just, female is on the biological scale, and on the hadronic scale, which is protons and neutrons, or the atomic scale, you can say, it's a neutron, and a proton is male. Like that's basically, they are basically the same thing. Their interactions are the same. That's why we call it the nucleus of an atom and the nuclear family. It's the same. So that, we've separated in these different fields different terms for the same structures and in the same context, but on different scales. And it has caused us to think that, oh, well, that's physics, and that's biology, and that's sociology, and that's, chemistry. And the reality is, my dog again, that it's the same pattern on all scales. So, really made sense. I really like the Tower of Babel analogy and the specialization. Cool. I'm glad that resonates. Yeah, it hit me too when I realized it. I was like, dang, it's intense. When I had a bout of gardening, I really felt like I learned a lot about life and people just see plants grow. Oh yeah, I grow bromeliads and geckos, and it's basically gardening. I built a irrigation system, and I have used the same soil but added to it. But there's microbes in it and stuff for 10 years, like to grow the plants. And I hatched out 2 geckos yesterday. I've got 2 new eggs about to hatch. Like to learn about life is to learn about life. Growing plants, growing animals will teach you about people, much more so than any sociology class ever could. So you're totally right. I agree with you 100%. But with that, thank you, everybody. Please hit, like I said, hit the like button, subscribe, comment down below any thoughts you have, positive, negative, doesn't matter. And like I said, if you'd like to join our Discord discussion, please send me a private message on Instagram, and I will send you the link to it. But with that, thank you, and I will be back next week. Peace. Oh, by the way, thank you to Eric and Avi and Brian for their discussion. Highly recommend subscribing to all of them, and I applaud anyone in academia who is brave enough to have these discussions.